This is the Menopause Movement Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Gordon. Did you know that menopause is not a medical condition? Your doctor or healthcare provider probably doesn't know this either. Now, I created the Menopause Movement to help women just like you decrease the suffering that menopause can cause. And the Menopause Movement provides world-class transformational education to help women make menopause the best time of their lives. And we've opened up a free video workshop for you to help you make menopause the best time of your life. Simply go to menopausemovement.com/workshop to sign up. Today, we welcome Marianne Kane to the podcast. Marianne is a cardiac nurse turned ACSM certified personal trainer, kettlebell expert, and mom who's on a mission to bring real fitness to real women. She founded her blog, myomyfitness.com, in 2010 to journal her own fitness journey and soon found her short and effective kettlebell workouts named in Shape's top 10 YouTube workout channels, reaching millions around the world. Marianne also collaborated with other influencers in the industry, co-founding Girls Gone Strong and Get Glutes to inspire more women to pursue strength training. These days, Marianne continues to provide sustainable fitness programs and workouts via her membership, equippedwithstrength.com, and her signature 8-week glute training program at getglutes.com. Marianne believes there are too many shoulds and have-tos, and nobody needs that stress. She knows there's a way to be strong without draining your valuable time and energy. Keep it simple and doable and fluff-free, which is exactly what her coaching style encourages. During our interview, we talk about Marianne's professional and fitness journey, how beliefs about our bodies can shape our behavior and our fitness successes, chronic pain and what to do about it, focusing on the journey rather than the results, how pregnancy changes our bodies and maybe our perception of ourselves, what to do just once a week to build muscle, perfectionism and how to look at it differently, and stay to the end to find out how to look at measurements other than the scale to keep you motivated and successful in your fitness journey. At the end of the episode, make sure you visit menopausemovement.com/blog, where you can find the show notes plus the links to the books and resources mentioned in the episode. And if you enjoy this episode, be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts so you're always the first to know when each episode is released. And thanks for all of the 5-star reviews. If you haven't left a review yet, please take the time to review the podcast, a written review on whatever podcast platform you use, because when you do this, more women can find the podcast and get the help they need during the disruption of menopause, because no one should have to go through this alone. And just before we get to Marianne, we talk a lot in this podcast about chronic pain. And one thing I forgot to mention during the podcast was a great book to help you reframe pain that you might be having if you have a chronic condition like fibromyalgia or maybe a type of osteoarthritis or even rheumatoid, any sort of autoimmune disease that causes pain. And that is called the Great Pain Deception. And so I recommend that you get that book and read it because it can really help you understand more about pain. Now, let's get to Marianne. And thanks for being a part of the Menopause Movement. Marianne, thanks for coming on the Menopause Movement podcast today. I'm so happy to have you. And you've got such a really interesting background that you started as a cardiac nurse. And so let's just hear a little bit about you, where you're from, what got you into, I want to hear your story a little bit, like what got you into this. You're a fitness expert, kettlebell expert, but you're also a cardiac nurse. And so you've pivoted out of that. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I think my audience will probably really relate. I mean, a lot of us tend to shift our careers in midlife. And so this is really super interesting.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And it's funny, the origin story. I was a nurse in my late 20s. I left nursing to pursue the fitness career in my early 30s. And there was a little overlap there. But yeah, I actually started experiencing a lot of chronic pain. And it turned out I had an autoimmune arthritis called ankylosing spondylitis. And it was just this journey of trying to make myself feel better. And one of the frustrations I felt, I was working in the NHS. I'm from Northern Ireland. And, you're understaffed and you're high stress, and that didn't help things. But I loved fitness. I loved movement, and I wanted to get better at that. One of the things that was heartbreaking for me was to see people recovering surgically from their cardiac bypasses and valve replacements and things, but then being really stuck after that in trying to change their lifestyle. so that they didn't end up back in.
Yeah.
And it felt more that there was so much work needed done there to help people even before they got to the point of needing that heart surgery. And I just wondered, like, could I be of better use maybe on the other side? And I just loved strength training. I loved kettlebells, and it just seemed like a natural progression to make that my thing. And that's what I did. I've been doing the online fitness since 2010, and I was very fortunate. I got involved in a lot of movements, the Girls Gone Strong being one of them. And over time, I've really changed my own approach to fitness because life happens, and having been in the industry so long, you see it time and time again. What is it that knocks people off track, and why do people really struggle to get back into it? And somebody who was so enthusiastic about it, like, it was just like, I couldn't imagine how anyone wouldn't just take to this like a duck to water. But at the same time, then, or eventually, when chronic pain came back to me, I went through a period of depression. I moved countries twice in the last decade. And then I had my daughter 3 years ago. And I realized that, and then the pandemic, and just how life just can throw you through a loop sometimes. And we have to be so compassionate with ourselves as we try to get into fitness. And like, this is I'm even more on fire now because I realize what doesn't matter and what does.
Yeah, that's great. So you've been able to kind of prioritize what's important to you. And one of the things I think that, you know, we tend to have some pain. You're not menopausal. You've got a young child, but you've been through some things that a lot of menopausal women go through, like, you know, aching joints, and you know, a lot of women will get these autoimmune issues, you know, Hashimoto's or another type, you know, maybe a rheumatoid or even maybe an inflammatory bowel disease. And one of the things that we almost never talk about is how diet relates to these issues. And so, do you address diet in your programs?
I actually don't address diet. I go into more in terms of the details of foods and things like that. I would think that's out of scope for me as a trainer. I would refer somebody to a dietitian. But I would help with people with habits around food and eating and the mindset stuff. Definitely, that would be more in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I like to say, you know, we live our whole lives in our mind. And if we can't make that a friendly place, we're going to have a really hard time being happy. And so it's important to, you know, and mindset is hard to sell because people don't really understand it. It's so nebulous. And so when we can get to the point where I learned this from Wayne Dyer, is like, you know, you live your whole life in your mind. And when you start to realize that everything is an interpretation of what our senses bring in, then we can kind of make our lives a little bit happier when we start to change our minds. But are you still having a lot of pain?
No, thankfully I'm not. And, you know, touch wood, like, you know, I think when you talk about the mindset, the beliefs about your body is a huge piece of this. The pain for me, when I had it, I tended to think the worst, and I would go on this quest to fix myself. And this is my beef with the industry, is that they enable that, encourage, they not necessarily mean to, but what happy people are out buying products. Like, you need people to feel that there's something missing all the time, or like, so it's really, you're preyed on. You're dysfunctional. You don't stand right. You don't sit right. You don't breathe right. You can't like do this exercise until you can crawl and roll again like you were a baby and go through the whole progression. Like, you get caught up in so many weeds that you become so overwhelmed. So when something does feel like it's wrong in your body, you go to like the worst place possible and you think, right, well, that's it. I won't be able to do this. My life is always going to be like this. And then you can't fix yourself by nitpicking the details. One of the things I realized was that my beliefs about my body being broken in the first place was deeply rooted as a teenager. And there was always something that I had to fix. Either I was too big, I wasn't strong enough, or I didn't stand right, walk right. Any detail. And I think there comes a point in your life where you have to say, well, maybe it's something I'm being told what I should want for myself. People are constantly telling me what I should want, and what do I actually want? And how can I get that sustainably and in a way that's going to free me not trap me even more, but free me from these ideas. And that was a big turning point for me and my pain, because it was so amplified with worry and anxiety, and I catastrophized it. I really did. But being able to reduce that has, I believe, helped a lot with how I still get niggles. I still get aches and pains like everyone else. And I hope I don't have a flare. The test will be, if I have a flare, how would I deal with that now? But I hope that I would be able to talk myself. And it's how you talk to yourself. When you said that, I was like, I'm reading this book right now. It's called Chatter by Ethan Kross. And it's about that inner critic. It's about the inner dialogue and how you talk to yourself, even down to whether you refer to yourself as an I or a you or by your name. And it's just so empowering to switch how you see yourself and speak to yourself.
That's really great. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about, in the menopause movement, we spend a lot of time talking about how we speak to ourselves. And through this work that I did in order to create the Meno system, I started looking at how I spoke to myself and how I viewed myself. And I realized that the person I thought I was like this 14-year-old who always needed permission. And, I mean, she was fearless in a lot of ways, but she was also meek. And it wasn't until, I would say, maybe 3-4 years ago that I finally said, well, that's not accurate. You're an adult now. You don't need to ask for permission. It's really important to look at the way we speak to ourselves. There's another book also that is really, really good on making friends with the weird roommate we have inside of our head, who's kind of, maybe a little bit neurotic. And that's The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I recommend that one a lot too. That's a really great book. But mental chatter is a huge thing. And I think that what happens, and I'm not a psychologist, but I think what happens is that, around the age of 2, we start to create, some persona of ourselves. And depending on the way that our parents or the people who are caring for us interact with us, we start telling ourselves stories to make sense of the world. Because, really humans, it's all about story. And once we start to tell these stories to make the world make sense to us, we start to believe them as if they are true. And so to take a step back and say, well, where did that belief come from? And is this really true? And those things. And so for you to actually confront all your beliefs around your pain, I'm sure that was huge for you, because, and if you're one of the women who's listening to this and has, chronic pain, a lot of it has to do with how we choose to think. And I don't have chronic pain. I mean, I get a headache once in a while, and, I've got a bum shoulder right now. I'm going to physical therapy, but I don't know what it's like to have, severely debilitating chronic pain, but I do know that we can do a lot with our thoughts.
And yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's almost, I think when I first learned about that, and sort of the idea that pain is like a biopsychosocial experience, it emerges from the person. And I thought what they were saying, or what people were going on about, was it was somehow in my head. And and since that, I've realized that it's just this interplay with so many systems in your body that it's so hard to pull out the thread of what the thing is that's causing it. And sometimes, we're trying to find the why, but it's like sometimes that's lost and it's already gone. Like it's just the cycle has started. So there's a way to interrupt that and change something. Pain is to tell you to change something, and that can be a mindset thing. It can be a movement that maybe you're doing a different way. It could be or what you're eating, how you're sleeping, and how you're managing your stress. And you just can't separate. And even now that I'm a fitness trainer, but I'm not talking about exercise so much as to what's your mindset about exercise and what are you hoping the outcome is going to be. I think that a lot of people and our society is obsessed with results. And this is another beef I have, because any wonder nobody's happy about on a journey to get there, because they're waiting for this end point, and there is no end point. It's not like in 8 weeks you're going to have something and keep it. Like you have to almost like adopt it into your not daily life. I don't exercise every day, but when I do, it's like it has to be enough. Like I just see it as part of this long walk that I'm taking, and it's not a race. It's just part of my life.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. I think that one of the things, like for me, when I was, 50, 60 pounds heavier and trying to understand exercise and comparing my life, myself, to the person that used to exercise and was thin and thinking I had to get right back to that immediately. And that kept me from even trying rather than accepting myself at the point where I was, which is kind of how I was able to get back into it and say, I just have to beat yesterday. I just have to do a little bit better than yesterday, or I have to do a little bit better, or I have to do the best I can today. And then, kind of stay in the present and get out of that past thing. And I've been working with a triathlon coach since 2015, and my weight's been all over the place. I was really having trouble. And for me, I thought that initially I thought exercise was going to help me lose weight. And as I've done more research, especially into nutrition and menopause and the hormones that are involved and all those things, exercise is really good for us. We have to move our bodies. We're designed to move. But if what you're going to do is exercise, thinking that the exercise is what's going to make you lose weight, then you're going to be disappointed, like I was. I'd look at my month and I'd say, well, I worked out, 27 out of 30 days. Why is my weight the same or more? Mm-hmm. And I wasn't really paying attention to my nutrition. I just thought all I had to do was exercise, because in my 30s, that's all I had to do. I just had to increase my movement and, just be a little bit more careful with my diet, but not a whole lot. And everything came off. And I was like, yay. And then, as perimenopause hit, and I was getting more and more, and it's just like this, it's like this cycle, because it was like, you're so fat, you can't do anything, you suck. And then this, as I started to exercise more, especially when I go out for running, it's like I have to get myself kind of amped. I'm not as much now as before, but I used to have like all this anxiety before I went for a run, like I was going to fail it. It's like, how can you fail a run? You either run the whole time, or you run and walk, or you do my mind makes zero sense.
I actually, that story is very familiar to me. Because I've done that to myself. So I saw this point, like when I had my daughter, I gained like nearly 50 pounds, and like that's 3 years ago, and I'm still like 20 pounds up. And there's a mourning process. Like I was at the best shape you could possibly be, like quote unquote, whatever that is. Like that was the pinnacle. And then all this stuff happened. And I'm now this, and I'm fine. Like I'm strong, and I'm doing consistent training, and it feels really good. And actually feels really good not to worry so much about the scale weight, but more performance goals and the consistency goal. And that's really helped shift my enjoyment into more sort of, I guess, higher place. But one of the things I did, the strategies I used, was to lower the bar of entry so that I could do a minimum goal, and rather than a maximum goal of what I used to do. And so I'd always like say, but it's not as good as such and such, or yeah, but I only did this, and that's, what's the point if I'm only going to do this anyway? And disqualifying myself even before I'd started or after I'd done it. So either, they always say it's like the hardest thing is getting started. And I think that's true, but also it's very hard to leave and know that you did enough, or feel like you did enough, and say, I did a good job, and my effort really counts, and my effort really matters. And even if I didn't do all the things I had hoped, I still did something. Even if it was one set of push-ups or whatever it was, like I did more than nothing. And I brought down the level of success to somewhere that was really where I was right at that moment. And this sort of meeting yourself where you are that day really became my motto for, that sort of year that I was struggling after having my first baby, my only baby right now. But like, it was very, very hard to be compassionate, not to compare myself to the past. And the other thing if you're somebody who was really fit in the past, and you basically, quote unquote, were derailed by life, then it can be really hard mentally on yourself as you see maybe other people who look like you used to look, or are just like you were. And you're like, back in the day, I was like, whatever. And you have this nostalgia, but you also are angry at yourself because you didn't maintain it. And what happened? Or why couldn't I pop back into place whenever, like friends of mine who are just like, look like they've never had a baby, and they've had like 3. and what was wrong with me that all this happened to me and all this stuff, right? But then I look at like my push-ups. So I always use push-ups as an example. Back in the day, I used to do 15, 20 push-ups, but today I can only do 8. But the challenge is the same. The challenge of those 8 is the same as the challenge of those 15. So that's what matters. It's the work, it's the effort. And in some ways you could spin it and say, well, it's more efficient now because I only have to do 8 to meet the same challenge. So I actually like thinking of things slightly differently than I used to, whereas it was all about the numbers, you know, it had to be the numbers, but now it's not so much about the numbers. It's more about the effort.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like the outcome and the process, right? And so when you set a goal, and if you can set that goal and, you know, kind of just say, okay, this is the outcome I want, and now I have to focus on the process, and I'm either going to get the result I want or the lesson I need. And when you can just let go of that and say that this is how it works, that really, really helps. But what you were talking about there before made me think of, you know, when I was first getting started with exercise, I would use like small habits. And there's a great book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Atomic Habits is a great book about how to get started on something and why it's important. And so there were days when the only thing I had to do, and I still practice this, first thing in the morning is just all I have to do is put on my exercise clothes. And when I have them on, then I'm more apt to go and do my fasted cardio or whatever it is I choose to do in the morning. Or even if I just wear the clothes all day and then, you know, hop on the bike later, which is what that's today. Today's a bike day. But I also did fasted cardio and, you know, whatever. But when the only thing you have to do is put on your trainers, then that's a win. And so I think that's really, really important, is to get to that point where, you know, you can find a small habit. And I like to say this all the time, when you get stuck and you feel like you're just not going to move forward at all, then pick one thing that is impossible to fail. It's just so small, it's impossible to fail. And then take that action, because when you start taking action, that's when the motivation happens. Motivation is a myth. It's not real. And so when you start to take action, start to see results, you're going to feel more motivated to do more. But you've got to start. If you don't start, you're never going to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're singing my song. It's like, I think I even say somewhere in my program that it's like so doable. It's almost impossible to fail. Like, it just has to start that way. And even one of the things that people you're either trying to get started, or you're doing stuff but you feel like it's just not enough, or there's something missing. And if you're following fitness people on social media, it's very easy to end up feeling that way. It can make your self-esteem worse. Ooh, and
you ain't kidding there.
Yes.
And these are professional athletes. I mean, I just want to say that, if you're looking at these women who have, abs, first of all, most of them probably haven't had a baby. We'll start with that. And then, the guys who are like super cut, guys have a much easier time losing fat than women do. It's just the way it is, because they have different hormones. And actually, it's just something that just came to my mind, that men who are transgender, they have to gain weight to look more feminine. And it's, because it's just hard for them to lose their muscle mass. And so for you, if you are a woman who is like watching all these fitness models and, these bikinis and the abs, these are people who are crazy. I mean, they work out, I'll work out an hour, maybe 2 hours a day, depending on what my, maybe hour and a half. I mean, it's just not a lot, right? Compared to somebody who is a crazy athlete, and they're working, professional athlete works out 7-8 hours a day, maybe 6, make sure that they're eating enough. They've got, their nutrition is really, really precise, and it's all science-based. And that's what, these people are crazy, and this is their job. And
the photos that, the optics that go into the photos, the fluid manipulation to get that lean look, that's temporary. That's so temporary, you can't maintain that. And
especially as a woman.
As a woman, yeah. It's like, and when you're saying you work out once or twice, or 1 or 2 hours a day, I'm like, I work out 1 or 2 hours a week. But it's like, whatever it is that's going to work for your lifestyle, right? It's like, I think we get lost in sort of, so-and-so says I have to do such and such, and that's a lot. Even the sort of, you only have to do 10 minutes a day. I used to hate that. because then you have to get yourself to do something every single day. And I would much rather set myself that one. I had a minimum goal of one workout a week, and it didn't matter how long it was. It was non-negotiable. It was on a Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. And that's when my husband took the baby, and that's with my one workout. But what happened was I'd do a second workout, and hey, it was a bonus. Whereas I was always aiming for 3 or 4 and only doing 1 or 2 and feeling I was always falling short.
Right.
And the type of training I do is like kettlebells and body weight stuff and, bands and things. It's like perfect home workout things. I do have a barbell here and I do work with heavier weights sometimes, but I love my kettlebells. So it is a lot of strength training that I would do and sort of maybe just walk in between. And that's enough. I do 2 main workouts a week and they last about 45 minutes. But it's so efficient. It's like, I want something that's going to be efficient and effective and fun.
Yeah, that's really great. So efficient, effective, and fun. And so if you're a woman who wants to get fit and you want to maybe, shape your body, we know that resistance training is important to avoid osteoporosis. This is all, research proven. And especially if you have been out of it for a while, then, obviously you want to make sure that you're not at risk to be injured. And it's important before you start an exercise program to go and talk to a healthcare person. But I would say that the best exercise is one that you'll do.
Yes.
Okay. and you don't have to be like me. I mean, for me, my goal this year, we're recording this in at the end of March 2021. You're probably not going to be aired until May. And my goal for this year was to do some recorded workout every single day. And when I got my second Moderna shot, I had such a high fever and I felt so crappy. I couldn't do anything that day. But then every other day so far, I have. And that was just something I really wanted to do. Is like I can get on the elliptical. I've got a full gym. I can get on the elliptical. I do a lot of cardio. I take the dogs walking, things like that. I'm not a big weights person right now, but it's coming. I'm going to get back into weights again. The problem is I have delayed onset muscle soreness. And so it's really, when I start a weight regimen, it takes like 3 weeks before I stop having pain. And
wow.
So I have to really work. I have to really work hard to get my mind in.
1 set, 1 or 2 sets, once a week, or even they looked at weight training in older populations, and that
what's older? What do you consider older?
I would.
Over 45?
I think these studies were...
Wait until you're 45, honey. You won't think that's old.
older. I actually think it was older than that, maybe 60s and above. So it's looking at how to maintain, health and wellness. And they looked at, biochemical measures and, balance and things like that.
Yeah.
And bone density. And 1 workout a week, or 1 strength workout a week, this is, or every other week, helped to maintain that sort of strength. And if you're just beginning, you're at a complete advantage because you've got what we call newbie gains, and where you've got the unique ability to both add muscle and burn fat at the same time.
Well, that's really a good advantage. And so so let's talk about that for a second. So for the audience, if you're getting started, I mean, how would you like to have the gains that come from regular lifting, but only have to do it once a week? And I've seen studies like that, and especially it seems that working with kettlebells is a key there. And so are you saying that if I were to do 100 kettlebell swings once a week, that might help to increase, the whole posterior chain, my arms, everything? That would take me like 4 minutes.
Yes. So the kettlebell swing, I wouldn't start somebody off with 100, but we could build up to the 100, right? So I would say 3 sets of something, 2 or 3 sets of 10. The kettlebell swing is 1 part. So that would be your posterior chain. And then I would couple that with something like squats, a row, and say some kind of press. And that can be a modified or full push-up or an overhead press. And it can be a 2-handed press where you hold 1 kettlebell with 2 hands, which is a nicer, more stable position. Or if you do have good overhead stability, you could press 1 lightweight overhead to begin with and just build that up. So for beginners, you're generally looking at 2 sets of something, 12 or 8 to 12 repetitions of something. And that could be twice a week to begin with to allow you, it could be once a week to begin with, right? So say the guidelines in the ACSM, the American College of ACS, I'm going to forget this.
Sports medicine.
Sports medicine,
Yeah.
say that, twice a week. But you could do once a week because you're still going to see gains. This is actually how I started fitness. I used to go to one circuit class a week, and I had so many DOMs after that. It was a week before I could train again. And I saw massive strength gains just going to that once a week.
So just for the audience, DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. Yeah.
Yes. So and if you're getting like repeated DOMs and things, we're to the point where you can't like sit on the toilet without like needing assistance.
Yeah, that happens to me after squats. Like I do sumo squats and then, oh, my legs.
Right. So you might need to scale back on either the intensity that you're doing. It could be the volume. So how many reps and sets are you doing in that workout? So, because when people start into a workout, they're so motivated and so excited that they do too much. And then they get so sore, it kind of becomes a diminishing return. And then they can sort of say, oh, well, this is too, they give up. And then it's maybe a few months until they start again. So something's so little, even if it's just one set, a couple of times a week, you practice, you just use it as like play and see, oh, I wonder what this exercise is like. And this kettlebell swing business looks kind of fun. But then I think people get worried about being injured with kettlebells, and the kettlebell swing is one that I do recommend that you learn how to do properly, but I wouldn't make it a villain as in it's inherent risk in the exercise. It's just like anything else, there's a learning curve, and you want to start with something really light, like just body weight, learning the movement pattern, and then begin slowly to load that up. And load it up with weight, but also how much of that movement you're doing in one go. So there's different stacks. And these details may seem like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to get that right. But all you're doing is starting easy and making it harder over time.
But that's just like anything. I mean, I talk about dose dependence a lot when it comes to exercise, and my personal experience with running and how I was able to, I started running. I was like 30 pounds heavier than I am now when I started running. And I was like, my coach would assign me like 1 mile. And I'd come home and my wife would say, well, that was fast. I'm like, well, it was a mile. What do you expect? I'm getting started. It's like, I don't, and I wasn't able to run the whole thing without stopping. It was like run, walk. And I just, I never expected anything other than let's just move the body and let's get back to running. I was a runner when I was in high school. Then I had open heart surgery. And after open heart surgery, I pretty much gave up fitness for a while until I was in my 30s. What I've noticed is that when we can let our expectations go when it comes to fitness and just focus on enjoying the moment. And sometimes it sucks. I'm not going to say, sometimes you've got to embrace the suck, because sometimes, the run is sucky, or the bike workout is sucky, or the swim is sucky, or even the weight workout is sucky, but it's better than not doing anything. And sometimes running up a hill is really hard and stuff like that. But what I've found is that when I just stay consistent with it, before I know it, I'm running an hour without stopping. And my heart rate is not in the 180s. It's down in the, 150s, 160s. And I'm just getting more and more and more fit. But it's dose dependent. So you have to spend time doing it. Anything worth doing is worth sucking at it first. That's that's one of my phrases.
I like that one. I think that I call it fitness perfectionism. That there's, and I think that a lot of the fitness industry, again, preys on this idea of quote unquote perfect form, and that there's just a range. Honestly, there's just a range of what way somebody moves and whatever you're adapted to. And it may not look the prettiest, but it's probably not as bad as you think it is. The dose dependency, that's a really important part. And, you're 1 mile being so quick. And it's good that you're able to say, well, I'm only starting out, because a lot of people will say it wasn't enough, or that can't be, is that it? Like, surely I must need to do more, but you really don't. There's just especially if you're struggling with consistency, the most important thing to prioritize is being consistent at something. And it's better if it's easy. if it's better, I think if it's easy, you may want to challenge yourself with certain exercises, but you don't need to challenge yourself with duration, because that's just going to become a big thing in your mind. You're going to have to do a whole hour. Like, don't make it so black and white. It doesn't have to be, there's nothing special about 1 hour over 10 minutes. Like,
Yeah, so that's really, really interesting, because we tend to value things that take more of our time. And so we tend to say, well, if I do it for an hour, that's more valuable than if I do it for 10 minutes. But we know from the studies that 10 minutes consistently is better than an hour inconsistently.
yes.
And so time is such a funny thing, because we spend so much of our lives like worrying about time, worrying about being on time or saying I don't have enough time. And when in fact, if we can just change the way we think about time to saying, what can I do in this amount of time that's going to get me closer to my goal? And so it's a matter of changing our relationship to time. And I think I just, I mean, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we could go down, but talking about perfectionism and procrastination are, they kind of go hand in hand. And perfectionism is truly just a fear of not being good enough. And when it comes to being successful, we have to take the chance to fail forward. And this was a tough lesson for me. And especially as a surgeon, it was really hard, because if I wasn't perfect at something, people could die. Yes. And so when I was able to take that away from, just kind of compartmentalize that perfectionism that I had to have in that high performance part of my life, and then take my exercise and say, it's okay if I walk when I run. It's okay if I get off the bike and go to the bathroom, or just take a breather, or take a glass of water, or whatever, and just give myself permission to not have to be perfect at it. And as soon as that happened, I started making gains. So that was good.
When you get out of your own way, kind of in some regards, because like it's the pressure. When we put so much pressure on ourselves, when you're consciously thinking about doing something, it's very hard on your mental energy. Like, it clogs things up. Whereas if you trust this happens in exercise. I don't know how much it works in terms of like fine motor things, in terms of like surgery and things. But when you're looking at movement, you think about what you want to do, and then you trust your body to do it. And at the beginning, there's a learning curve where you have to think more about it, like driving or riding a bike, and then playing the piano. But at some point, there's an automatic flow that happens, and you get into it, and you don't necessarily consciously need to think about it as much anymore. And it happens when you're not, it happens faster, and it's a more enjoyable process when you're not being so critical and worried about being perfect. It's so powerful. And I always think it's interesting how the fitness industry, I always rail against the industry, because like what they do is like make you think about all the things you're not doing right, or the things you don't have. And so you become more and more focused on those where you're not versus where you are, and what you have and what you can do. So my whole thing is you're equipped with exactly what you need already for that next step. Doesn't have to be the 10th step. You have everything you need right now for whatever that is for you. And you don't need somebody, a trainer, not me. I'm not going to come and fix you. My program isn't your hero. You're the hero of your own story. I may be a guide along the way, but you have so much power and agency in this process that don't get caught in the weeds of what other people tell you what you want. Those taking your power away.
Yeah, that's really good. So, there's a couple things here. I wanted to touch on the fact that, my son is going to be 28 years old in April, and I still haven't lost the baby weight. And I'm not the only woman. A lot of women will have babies and then just never lose the baby weight. And, I look at Kate Middleton, for example, who, she has had, she's pregnant again, I think. I don't know. She's had 4 children, right?
Oh, I don't
3 or 4. I don't know.
Wow.
I don't know. She's got a bunch of kids. She's had a bunch of kids, a bunch more than me. I had one. Mm-hmm. And she's out there like right away afterwards looking so skinny. Mm. And Meghan Markle, the same thing. And, a lot of celebrities have had children and then they just they get their bodies back. And I don't think that that's the norm. And I always was comparing myself to, like, why can't I lose my body weight, my baby weight? And life just kept on going. And I kept on doing the things I wanted to do. But I was always upset that I always had this pouch. And that's just a change in my body that came because I chose to give life to, to use my body to create life. And that's okay. And so I had to really accept my body there. And so if you're a woman who's, gained a lot of weight when you're pregnant and you're trying to lose it, even now, even though all your kids are grown and out of, you got grandchildren, all that stuff, there is hope. And that comes from starting with accepting who you are and starting right where you are, and rather than trying to compare yourself to any celebrity like a Helen Mirren, for example. I mean, she's super lean. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was the fitness industry. Did you want to say something about that? I'll just shut up for a second.
Would just a small point on questioning the game. So it is kind of tied into the industry again.
Yeah.
The questioning why do we need to lose our baby weight? And like, it's been instilled in us that we just sort of take that on. And sometimes I wake up, I'm like, why do I want this anyway? Like, who says I need to lose this fat? Like, it's just fat and it's just a shape. It's like your body grew a baby and now my tummy looks like that. And when I compare myself to other people or my old self, there's still that little voice that goes, I wish I didn't have it like this, or I wish I was like, it looked different. And I feel like when I'm doing my kettlebell swings, I feel my tummy like wobble. And there is this like part of me that's still like fat phobic. And I'm like, I cringe at that part because I don't want to be fat phobic, but I also don't I'm kind of in this weird in between part of knowing what I'm thinking and not wanting to believe those things. So I just try to observe it and go, I don't want to play the game. The game is sort of stacked against me in terms of the fitness industry. They tell you what you want and then you either play it or you don't. And I think that you cannot play it by just being with yourself and be like, okay, I look like this. I can't really change it right now. I can't snap my fingers and change it. So let me just sit with this. And, I have this theory that no matter where I go or how I look, I'm still going to feel these certain feelings and it'll be about something else. Because when I was 22, I got breast implants and I thought that would make me feel better. And then whenever I was 31, I had them removed thinking I don't want them anymore. And then I still felt the same. And there was just no escaping myself, really.
Because wherever you go, there you are.
There you are.
Yeah. No, this is really good because there's a lot of external pressure on us, especially in a patriarchy as women, to look a certain way, to act a certain way, to ask for permission, to make men happy. Okay. And that's we're groomed from childhood on up that we exist for men. And I'm not bashing on men. This is just the society we live in. And we can change that by changing our minds about what that means now. And that's kind of part of my mission. And that's why, if menopause happened to men, there would have been something because it's really disruptive for women. And it's almost like, how I like to talk about menopause is that, we had puberty and we knew it was coming because it was a big change and they made sure we knew. Pregnancy, big change. You get a lot of help through pregnancy. Menopause comes and you're just out on your own. And so many women just feel lost and lonely and they don't know what to do. And the weight starts piling on and they start feeling horrible. And then the libido goes and people don't understand why they don't want to have sex. And just so a lot of things happen in menopause. And a lot of it, and the reason I bring this all up is because a lot of it comes back to body image. And we feel like we're not good enough. And listening to the media, listening to the fitness industry, all of those things, looking at the celebrities that have a lot more resources than most of us do, those things are the things that are just going to help our mental chatter be like, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And what we have to do is we have to make friends with that voice in our heads and say, we have to change our minds about it. And I tell this story about when I was on a cruise ship at the end of 2018 or 2017, I don't remember. But we were down, it was at the end of the year cruise ship. And every time I looked in the mirror, I said to myself, you're so fat. And, it was end of the year. So I was like, I got to make a new resolution. I was like, I am not going to do that anymore. And I'm going to look in the mirror and say, I love you. Where you are, I love you. And I started doing that. And when I did that, then things started to change for me. I started taking different actions. Wow. And the fitness industry exists to feed the fitness industry.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist for anything else. It is there to take your money.
Yep.
And if you want some help, hire a coach to learn how to do things. And Marianne's here for that. But, to spend endless amounts of money on supplements and pills, powders and potions and patches and things like that maybe are not even going to help you. Remember, a baby never gets upset when they fall down when they're learning how to walk. Ever. I mean, and they never get upset when they say a word wrong. And we have to approach it that way. Like we can't fail.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even the fitness, I was looking up at the history of the fitness industry and how we got to this place. And it actually, before it was commercialized like it is now, it started off way in ancient Rome, when in gymnasiums or ancient Greece or whatever. And it was this idea of nobility or being the elite of the population. And then you in other countries, Russia and even Germany and things, where they trained their soldiers who were the elite. And then you look at posture, and a certain posture means you're elite and you're better. And if you have bad posture, quote unquote bad posture, it means you're lazy and people judge you and think you're stupid. And the social implications of these things drive people to want to appear to be, well, they don't want to look lazy or stupid. And we're driven into this funnel of not being good enough as we are as ordinary people. And so now we want to look like these, muscular, lean physiques that can do all these things, as if that's somehow better.
Right. And the
I
other
always
thing,
find that's fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, remember that when we set a goal that I'm going to be happy when, right? And you hit that goal and you're still not happy, there's something missing there, because our happiness is not dependent on a goal. Happiness is a choice. And you can choose to be happy in this moment right now where you are, rather than saying, when I get this, then. And when you're able to let go of an outcome as the means to your happiness, then you're going to have a lot more freedom to make the mistakes that you have to make in order to learn what you need to learn. And that was so huge for me, just understanding how to move forward in my fitness, in my life, in my business, and the big pivots I've done in my life. And so that's really good. But the last thing I want to talk to you about before I find out if there's anything else you want to talk about is you write here, you write here on your outline that the best progress measures are not on the scale. And I'd like you to talk about that for a minute, because we are so entrenched in looking at this number on the scale. And, just for me, I weigh myself every day, so, sometimes more than once. And I just see the fluctuations. And the reason why I do that is to really reinforce with myself, it's just a number. It's just a number. It doesn't matter.
People who do want to lose weight are more successful if they weigh themselves every day for that reason, so they can put in perspective the fluctuations. But I find a lot of people become obsessed with that number and don't realize that the weight on the scale doesn't correlate to how well you fit your clothes, especially if you're doing weight training or strength training and things. That really influences how compact you are. And you may weigh exactly the same and never lose a pound, but you do what's called like recomp. So your body composition just changes, from your body fat gets burned off as you build that muscle, and they replace each other. But the other measures that I'm talking about, or the other sort of measures of success, is I polled my audience, and most of my audience are women who are in their 40s and above, and they often talk to me about perimenopause and menopause issues, especially with fatigue and lack of energy and things like that, and that seems to be a big one. But they measure they're talking about how they feel when they're working out, or what is it about working out why do you do it? And they say, because it clears my mind, or I feel really accomplished. I love to be challenged and meet that challenge. And even though they've struggled with consistency, they still remember that the person that they are doesn't usually shy away from a challenge. And so why is fitness somehow different? I can do this. And it's not perfect all the time, but then there's strength measures, the things that you're improving at. Are you able to hold, if you want to do planks and you're able to hold it a wee bit longer this week, or can I squat a little lower this week, or do one more kettlebell swing? And while those are also still numbers, those are measures that are probably going to change quicker than the weight on the scale. It takes okay, you might see a drop one week, but then it might come up the next week and mess with your head. But if you're able to see that, and even just showing up, like, did I show up for my non-negotiable workout this week?
Yeah. That
string of ticks or X's on a calendar sometimes is very good, motivating, just not want to break the chain. And
yes.
Like you, when you had your second shot, and then it broke the chain, but you got back up and continued. And that's honestly what it's all about. And you can also track, like, the way you talk to yourself. Like, am I still saying the same things? Am I still walking past a mirror and saying, you're so fat, or you're so horrible, or whatever it is you say to yourself. And what you mentioned reminded me of, I think actually it was in one of your other podcasts where you're talking about headaches. And I can't remember the name of your guest, but mentioned
Dr. Veneziano
about gratitude and how important that is to switching into that other mode. And I started gratitude with this is going to sound so silly, but the only thing I could see that I liked about my appearance anyway was my eyebrows. Like, I thought my eyebrows look really good today. And that small little thing switched my whole like, I was oriented toward the negative before that. And then it just, all of a sudden I was seeing all these other things. And it just became a bit of a habit then to try to look at the bright side, or reframes. I love reframes because it's in your control. You can change your narrative. It's not stuck in one place. You can change the way you got to where you are now, and your future story. Like, it's not written in stone.
Yeah, that's so true. And I challenge any woman or any man, even if you're listening to this right now, to go to the mirror after this podcast is over and just look at your left eye and tell yourself, I love you, for 5 minutes in a row. And that's going to change everything. And really feel it, just like you would towards a lover or a spouse, and not in a sexual way. I mean, that's weird, but but more in terms of, like, one thing that I can say as a mother is that when I've never felt a bond to another human the way I felt the bond to that child. I mean, there's just so much, like, genetic and just instinctual care that came through once I birthed a child. And I'm, he's almost, he's an adult, he's almost 28 years old. And I'm still very, very, very protective of him as a mom. And so I think when you can kind of take that and really get that in your mind, that feeling of how much you love someone, maybe it's a pet, maybe if you've never had, or maybe it's a parent or a grandparent or something, but somebody that you really love, and then see if you can bring that feeling up, look in the mirror, and really just, put that towards yourself, because that is a big thing.
Powerful.
Yeah. So was there anything else you were hoping to share with the audience today?
I'm very grateful to have spoken to you and your audience today.
Awesome. And where can people find you?
You can find me at equippedwithstrength.com.
Equippedwithstrength.com. That's great. And thanks so much for being on the Menopause Movement podcast today, Marianne. I'm super, super excited to get this published as part of our fitness series, probably soon. I don't know when, but anyway.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to have you. All right.
Grateful to be here. Thanks.
Did you know that menopause is not a medical condition? Most doctors don't know this either. I like to say that menopause is the privilege of a long life, and to really take hold of our lives in menopause, we have to unlearn what society and the medical establishment has told us about menopause. This is why I've created this brand new course called Understanding Your Hormones and Managing Your Menopause. I want to show you how you can get on top of your menopause right now so that you can start to see it as the best time of your life. Now, this course is valued at $500 and is in the beta testing phase. And we're currently accepting applications for women to test it out for us at no charge in exchange for feedback and testimonials. But the best part is, because you're a podcast listener, you can bypass the application process and go straight to the front of the line. To register right now, simply visit menopausemovement.com/hormones, and we can get started together right now. Remember, you can get started right now at no charge to you in exchange for feedback and testimonials when you go to menopausemovement.com/hormones. And I'll see you inside the course. Thanks so much for being a part of the Menopause Movement.